Okay, let's just dive right in. Welcome to today's Explainer. We're looking at this totally fascinating, incredibly high-stakes system that is literally keeping you alive right now. I'm talking about the beautifully orchestrated process of managing your blood sugar. It's happening inside you at this very second. And honestly, the level of biological engineering involved here, it's nothing short of breathtaking.
To really unpack how this works, we'll follow a pretty clear roadmap today. First up, the glucose balancing act itself. Then, we'll look at the organs controlling that balance, followed by the hormones actually in charge. After that, we'll explore the phases of glucose survival, and finally, what happens when this whole balance breaks.
All right, part one, the glucose balancing act. So your body operates on this one fundamental, non-negotiable rule. Glucose is an absolute requirement for your brain and your red blood cells to function. Because of that, your biology is constantly fighting to maintain what we call glucose homeostasis. It's that perfect steady-state level of sugar in your blood. It's not static, though. It's this highly dynamic equilibrium, constantly adjusting just to keep you fueled and safe.
And you know what's wild? The sheer precision your body needs to pull this off is staggering. An ideal fasting blood glucose sits in an insanely tight window, just between 70 and 110 milligrams per deciliter. Even after you eat a big meal, your system is working relentlessly so that number doesn't spike past 140. We're talking about a razor-thin margin of error here.
To maintain that super tight window, your body basically plays a never-ending game of biological tug-of-war. It has to perfectly balance the rate of glucose entering your blood, from your diet or internal production, against the rate of it leaving through cellular use, storage, or conversion into fat. If either side of this seesaw tips even a little too far, the whole system just gets thrown completely out of whack.
Which brings us to part two, the organs controlling the balance.
Think of your liver as the ultimate factory manager. Its uptake or output of glucose is directly tied to whatever's floating around in your blood at that exact moment. When blood sugar is high, the liver actively pulls it in, oxidizes it, stores it as glycogen, or even turns it into fat. But the very second your sugar drops, it instantly reverses all that machinery to pump vital glucose right back into your bloodstream. It's just constantly sensing and reacting.
Now, the liver doesn't do this alone. Your skeletal muscles and fat tissues also play a massive role. When you're fed, they happily run on glucose. But during a fast, they do something incredibly selfless. They drastically reduce their glucose uptake and switch to burning fat and fatty acids instead. We call this the glucose-sparing effect, and it ensures that your dwindling supply of sugar is reserved entirely for the organ that needs it most, your brain.
Then we've got the kidneys, acting as crucial gatekeepers. Normally, they're like a perfect filter, reabsorbing 100% of your glucose, so absolutely none is wasted in your urine. But if your blood sugar spikes dangerously high, specifically exceeding what we call the renal threshold of 180 milligrams per deciliter, well, the kidneys just can't keep up. The gates break, and glucose actually starts spilling into the urine, which is a classic clinical sign of diabetes.
All right, moving on to part three, hormones in charge.
Okay, so this is probably one of the most critical concepts to grasp today, the ultimate hormonal seesaw. Insulin is the single, solitary hormone responsible for pulling blood sugar down. Just one. On the flip side, there's an entire mountain of hormones actively trying to push it back up. It is, quite literally, insulin versus the world.
The main rivalry in this setup is between insulin and glucagon. When your blood sugar hits about 5 millimoles per liter, the pancreas releases insulin. It acts like a key, basically demanding your cells taking glucose and triggering storage. But when your sugar falls, glucagon gets deployed to do the exact opposite. It forces the liver to synthesize new sugar and break down its stored glycogen reserves just to feed the blood.
But like I said earlier, glucagon isn't alone on its side of the seesaw. It's backed by what's basically an anti-insulin squad. Hormones like adrenaline and glucocorticoids rush into your system during stress, strong emotion, or starvation. They're there to guarantee your brain gets emergency fuel by actively suppressing insulin's effects, jacking up glucose absorption, and forcing your other tissues to just stop utilizing sugar.
Let's look at how this plays out over time in part 4, phases of glucose survival.
Our metabolism is literally built for survival in harsh conditions. It radically shifts its entire strategy across 5 distinct phases of fasting. This spans from just a few hours after a meal to, believe it or not, more than 24 days of prolonged starvation. Your body will fundamentally alter its chemistry just to keep you alive.
So during phase 1 and 2, you're relying on your diet and then your liver's stored glycogen. But by phase 3, which is just 16 hours in, those stores are depleting. Your liver and kidneys actually have to start synthesizing new glucose from scratch. And then the most fascinating shift happens in phases 4 and 5. The brain is eventually forced to abandon pure glucose altogether and adapts to running almost entirely on ketone bodies synthesized by the liver to survive long-term starvation. I mean, it is a total metabolic rewiring.
Which takes us to our final section, Part 5, when the balance breaks.
Because sometimes the system does break, and it usually happens in one of two directions. You can develop hyperglycemia, where blood sugar rises uncontrollably above normal physiologic limits, usually anything above 110 or 140, depending on if you're fasting, or you can experience hypoglycemia, where it plummets dangerously below 70 milligrams per deciliter.
And these disorders aren't just arbitrary. They're triggered by a wide array of systemic failures. Hypoglycemia, for instance, could be caused by an insulinoma, which is a tumor just pumping out way too much insulin, or even severe liver and kidney failure. On the flip side, hyperglycemia can be driven by adrenal tumors, various endocrine syndromes, and, well, of course, the most well-known culprit of them all.
That culprit, of course, being diabetes mellitus. Diabetes fundamentally breaks down this entire homeostatic system, usually in one of two primary ways. In type 1, there's a physical destruction of the pancreatic beta cells, leading to an absolute total loss of insulin production. In type 2, the body develops a progressive resistance to insulin's orders. So the hormone is there, but the cells just stop listening to it, which leads to this massive dangerous buildup of sugar in the blood.
So the really crucial takeaway from today's explainer is that these aren't just abstract numbers on a lab chart. The stakes here are literally life and death. A sudden severe drop in blood sugar, hypoglycemia, can trigger immediate seizures, a fatal coma, or even death because your brain is being starved of its only fuel. Conversely, chronically high sugar, it acts like a slow poison. It literally glycates and degrades your proteins over time, leading to destroyed nerves, blindness, and kidney failure.
Which leaves us with this final thought. Your liver, your kidneys, and that lone hormone insulin are working around the clock in this invisible life-or-death tug-of-war just to manage every single gram of sugar in your veins. Knowing the extreme lengths your biology goes to maintain this delicate balance, how are your daily diet and stress levels tipping those invisible scales? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.